Welcome everyone to my LSAT Insights series, installment number 4. And a common question that I've been getting over the past few weeks is how do my high scores, so my 170 plus students, how do they actually practice LR? What do I have them do? We will get right into it. The first thing I want to start with is what I don't recommend. The first thing I want to say is that drilling is very It's not that good in my experience. Drilling specific LR question types is a common practice approach. But you know what's not nearly as common? Scoring a 170 plus. And I do believe that there's a relationship there. The issue is that drilling definitely has some value for a lot of people in different places. But it does not provide what most people need to crack 170. So again, remember, everything that I say here is one, based on just my teaching experience, and two, oriented towards people who are in the 160s struggling to get into 170. I think doing entire sections is a far better approach. After I'm confident that a student has enough technical knowledge of the question types, I never assign question type specific drills. Instead, I put people on a pretty steady diet of practicing entire sections of LR, a mixture of timed and untimed. I do want to loop back a little bit to talk about what drills are good for, because I don't know if everybody watching this is actually going to be able to jump right into the full section practice without doing some drills. I wasn't being just diplomatic when I said drilling specific question types has some value. It actually has quite a bit of value when it comes to technique. For instance, if you simply do not know how to engage the negation technique on necessary assumption questions, drilling just that question type is a great way to gain that specific skill. The normal reaction that I get at this point of my spiel is, what the hell, man? Drilling sounds pretty awesome, then why don't you actually consider doing it if it yields such benefits in terms of skill? And of course the answer is no, drills are not as awesome as you make them sound just there. And so if you've been following my channel to any extent, you'll have heard this several times already to the point that you're probably getting sick of it, but I'm going to repeat it because it's true. In my experience, what holds a high 160 score back from entering the 170s is not technique. And of course, technique is what drilling is excellent at, but like I just said, that's not your problem. You guys already know how the question types should be tackled. You know the skills and the techniques and the actual process of getting it right. You know how that happens. It's always something else. It's always something else that seems to get in the way of you being able to fully engage that technical knowledge that you've gained over lots of blood, sweat, and tears in practice. Something else gets in the way of you doing that properly. Sometimes it's that you miss a particular keyword that changes the tone of a stimulus or answer choice, and it's not just time pressure, it just happens randomly sometimes, right? Other times, it actually is time pressure panic leading to various other errors. It doesn't really matter if you're on the standard 35-minute timing or if you've got an accommodation. The LSAT has deemed those equivalent. Whether or not you agree with it is a different story, but that's the reality. Given the time frame that you have, this exam is designed to be hard to do in time. Yet other times, it's that the trap answer looks pretty defensible. I do have a technique for getting between or distinguishing between a trap answer and the actual answer. But even on that standard, because the way we look at things is all pretty individualized and unique, what seems indefensible to me may seem pretty defensible to you. And in the absence of there being actually the correct answer, I think there are a lot of trap answers that are actually justifiable, that they are only wrong because there is a better answer out there. There are situations that I believe where that is an argument that you can make. And in those cases, it's just the language of that trap answer and the particular way you approach that language. It's not any other technical thing. And I think that this trap answer situation is closely related to another tactic that the LSAC can use, not just in answers but also in stimuli. They legitimately cheat, in my mind, with language and logical standards. That happens all the time. Or, the alternative is that you are just freaking tired of this LR, the LSAT, everything. It's an exhausting process. Alright, so then that leads to the next question. How are sections any better? We'll start by talking about the differences between LR and the other sections. It's different from RC and LG in that you basically have to reset and start over again, close to 30 times, because there's anywhere from like 24 to 26, 27 questions on an LR section. Each one is its own little monster. RC and LG allow you to look at one passage or a game, get a feel for how that thing works, then make use of that on 5 to 8 questions in a series. So over the course of a section, you reset technically 4 times, and that's it. LR is a different beast. LR looks at you and says, oh, you got through a tough question? Here, have another brand new one. Again and again and again. So in light of all that, doing full LR sections better captures the less tangible challenges you're going to need to overcome to finally reach the 170s. The first intangible thing, which of course we already discussed, is that full reset on every question. Drilling fails to capture this by allowing you to more or less keep the same mindset between questions, since a drill has you looking at the same question type repeatedly. Another thing that happens on sections, LR tends to get progressively more difficult as the section goes on. That's a very well documented thing that's probably 2 decades old at least at this point. Using a variety of question types. So LR does this progressive difficulty thing, and not just one question, just with all the questions. Drilling again fails to capture them, even if you have it ramp up in difficulty as you go along, because it's just the same question type getting more difficult instead of the actual variety that you'll face on a real section. So hard assumption question, harder flaw question, even harder weekend question. That's the natural progression in section, but easy assumption, slightly harder assumption, harder, even harder assumption. It's a little bit different. Yet another thing that happens is there's a danger of tunnel vision whenever you get really too deep into a question within a section. Drilling fails pretty hard here because you end up building a habit of focusing quite narrowly on the technical aspect of the question type that you're drilling. That's kind of the point of drilling, really, is to get you to have that narrow, really focused view. And that tends to increase the chance, in my experience, that you'll miss a much more easy, reliable, and obvious plain English reason to eliminate a wrong answer choice. And the LSAT absolutely loves abusing this. And all of the above ends up culminating in a certain level of mental fatigue. I know a lot of people feel more fatigued after reading comp. I feel like it's just more noticeable there, but there is quite a bit of fatigue here too. All the variety, the resets, and the demand for flexibility is a strain on our processing capabilities. I think just the sheer variety of it makes it feel less boring, perhaps, than a bad RC section or bad LG section, and that's why it doesn't have quite the same reputation of being as exhausting as those other 2 sections. But there's still a lot of strain going on here. So doing entire LR sections at a time just naturally captures all those intangible things that drilling misses, because all those things were things that come from the reality of how sections are in the exam, and so if you just practice full sections, you're just getting all of those things. It's not all fun and games, though. Section practice does have some drawbacks. The first thing is that it burns through practice material at a pretty high rate. These days, this is less of a problem with the sheer volume of prep tests that are out there, and the fact that most places that you're buying them from you're really just buying access to them, right? Will give you quite a few of them. That was a lot harder to do. I think way back in the day when I started, Kaplan may have been the only place where you basically got every single prep test in PDF format. Now there's Prep Plus from the LSAC itself. 7Sage basically has everything as far as I'm aware. Most solutions that you can buy into basically give you access to everything, or more than you have any hope of actually getting through before test day. But still, I do want to acknowledge that targeted drilling does more easily avoid burning through entire sections that you might in the future want to preserve for fully timed practice. It doesn't teach you technique as efficiently either. Like I said before, if you need to work on actually learning how a question type is done, drilling is far better there. So if you're struggling to just figure out how do I actually do this, and that's something you need to learn, then full section practice isn't the way to go. You might want to start with some drills just so you learn how to do it. That's what drilling gives you. What the section gives you is how can I take what I've learned and make sure that I'm actually making use of it more consistently and getting questions right. So in terms of specific suggestions, this is what I generally assign. Kind of starting out, I usually assign people to do only one full non-flex PT every week. And that kind of covers all the subject areas, but we'll get into how specifically that applies to LR here. You don't need to do all 4 of those sections in one sitting. Do the RC timed. This is just to stay sharp on it, even if your objective is really to shore up LR. Do RC timed just to stay sharp. This can change, obviously, if you are working on actively improving reading comp, but again, this is all in the context of practicing LR. Exact same thing with LG, do it timed, and again, this is just to stay sharp. Obviously, if you're working on LG, sometimes you do it timed, sometimes you do it untimed. That all depends on if you're actually working on LG or not. And finally, when it comes to LR, because these, like I said, these are non-flex prep tests that I'm assigning, there's going to be 2 LR sections. Do the first one timed. So do the second LR section untimed. This is the place where you're going to try to implement any new approaches you've decided on based on the results of your timed LR or any tutor meetings that you've had or any sort of other independent study that you've done that has given you something to try. This is the place to try it. And so if you're at the point where there isn't a whole lot of new things to try and that it's just you're at a point where you just need to make sure that since you know how to do everything, you are purely just trying to reduce silly mistakes and that sort of thing. For you folks, I'd recommend 2 full non-flex PTs per week. And that's, again, if you really don't have anything new to try and it's all just about reducing avoidable error. Do everything timed. And on top of that, try to complete at least one of those two PTs in one sitting with that 10-minute break that you get in the middle. And so if you've been doing all this for a while, for a number of weeks, and nothing changes, or if the score isn't moving in the direction that you want it to, try talking to somebody who can help look at your data. There's no guarantee, obviously, that they can actually help move the needle, but it's usually better than nothing. And that basically is it. I do have a pretty simple approach to assigning practice for LR. Again, this whole thing was based on the premise of it being, one, purely my experience, and two, oriented towards how my 160-ish students are brought up to 170. That's really all there is to it. I have been attempting and focusing on keeping these insights sections as short as possible, so that's all I have. Like and subscribe, do all the usual algorithm stuff, and as always, reach out to me if you have any further questions, complaints, feedback. I'd appreciate all of it. I will see you guys in the next one.